Fórum de Investimentos Brasil 2022. Diálogo temático: investimentos sustentáveis. A ótica do investidor. Porque investimentos sustentáveis são o diferencial competitivo do Brasil.
More and more investors are seeking to direct resources to sustainable businesses and corporate responsibility, pressuring companies to comply with environmental, social, and governance requirements. In this scenario, Brazil presents a wide range of sustainable projects with the potential to consolidate itself as a reference in the area. Explaining how the country has been preparing itself to respond to these global demands is the objective of this thematic dialogue, which will bring together Bruno Caldas Aranha, Director of Productive Social Environmental Credit at BNDES, Ana Puchain, Executive Director of People, Marketing, Communications and Sustainability at B3, Marcela Porto, Director of Communication and Brand at Suzano, and the moderator will be Bruno Caldas Aranha. Thank you, Apex, for this invitation. It's a pleasure to be here today and participate at this forum that is so important to Brazil today. Well, my name is Bruno Aranha, and I'm Director of Productive Social Environmental Credit at BNDES. And just to give you a bit of context, we are on fast speed in understanding about resilience of businesses, and so we're migrating from a shareholder capitalism where the purpose of businesses are its shareholders' profit towards a more holistic mindset in understanding why companies exist, its providers, communities, and their relations with the environment, which internalized in its purpose is understood as something that creates resilience and sustainability. Today, we have an understanding of this scenario, especially in the towards climate change, acknowledge human action and its effect in global heat, and also the pandemics generating, unfortunately, this issue, a very complicated agenda and also very dramatic one, and also the current war in Ukraine. And all this process goes in line with businesses, and not only, also the stakeholders, governments, investors. That is a bit of our talk here, and civil society as well. And today, looking at Brazil's point of view, there's a huge opportunity. This morning we talked a lot in comparing how Brazil could contribute to this scenario in terms, for example, of food security and climate. So today Brazil could be a relevant player in this journey. All this search for security passes through Brazil, and I have the honor to be here with Annie and Marcela, who are executives a high number of women, so it's a pleasure to have you here today. I'm sure I'll be learning a lot in this talk. And without further ado, I'll move on to Anna so she could talk a bit about this journey and how she sees the opportunities at B3 Exchange. So they are known to bring new instruments to the market. So Anna, please, the floor is yours. Thank you, Bruno. It is a pleasure to be able to talk with you in such a well-known forum like this. And of course with you, and it's so nice to meet people that look so seriously towards ESG and understanding how companies actually operate and understanding. I liked a lot how you talked a bit about stakeholder capitalism, because when we talk about equality, uh, workforce, our customers, we can build companies that are more and more resilient. And so our role as B3 to put together good investors and good companies is easier when we find companies that do this work. I believe that to give a brief about this matter, there's an aspect at B3 in terms of sustainability. The first is we're a state company. B3 today, we are a true corporation. We have a pulverized capital and we have multiple investors, especially foreign investors, learning about our best practices in terms of sustainability. And on the other hand, we try to induce businesses so they are more and more solid and attract investors. We have many ways to do this in terms of inducing businesses, is how we help them in reporting, measure, and show transparency in all ESG factors. Maybe we could look closer to the reports. We do a lot of indexes, and so we split companies within tests, sustainability tests. We have ICO2, which we developed in 2010, and many companies have added to it. And also the Great Places to Work Index. So we take all this data, report, and compare businesses that are working in these fields. We have been working a lot in the carbon sector. So these multiple roles we have at B3, in fact, they give us the opportunity to look close to this team and how businesses are working this scenario and how they're working their cases, attracting investments. There will be a lot to talk about. Thank you very much. Thank you, Bruno and Apex. It's always an honor to be here and talk about it. Like Anna mentioned, the stakeholder capitalism, it's very important. We have a very important stakeholder, how important this is to business. So these are agendas that are very inserted in our business. And because of this, we believe that we're well prepared to have an additional step, almost an activist role, having an activist role in developing the indexes and create awareness, improved reports, and even in educating our clients and in what is investing in companies in natural of natural capital. That is a very distinct business from the Northern Hemisphere companies. We feel, we see in a very particular way the climate change in order to, we try to guarantee biodiversity and building up what Bruno mentioned. Brazil is a natural cap champion in natural economy and biodiverse economy. And this is an agenda that requires a lot of discussion. So we need a lot of platforms, inventory platforms. We need to be very transparent. And so this is not a collaboration agenda. And so it's always a privilege to be in forums like this, open opportunities to work with this.
I'm sorry, we just mentioned the issue of monetization of environmental services, and carbon is nothing but that. So today, 60% of Brazil, we have some great projects here also in planted forests. So for Brazil, it's extremely strategic to develop this carbon market, because it's a service that Brazil provides to the country and to the world. Today, it is estimated that Brazil can represent 30 or 40% of the global market. And so it's a matter of working. And I believe that B3 can be a great articulator. Suzano, which is a great company, which is negative carbon among its activities. So I think that there is a great opportunity for Brazil to develop in this agenda. And so bringing from the standpoint of investors, we were mentioning about the emissions of the market that companies are doing, and how this agenda, SG agenda, is impacting emissions, and how investors see BNDES was the first Brazilian bank to make a green bond issuing abroad in 2017. That was an issuing of $1 billion US, in which there was a demand 7 times larger, and also here in the market, a green portfolio in 2020, and that is based on our portfolio of sustainable projects. So today, the market, the bank has 440 billion reais in its portfolio, and more than half of it is representative of sustainable projects. So there is a lot of space for investment, and the market is taking over these resources. We still signal operations on the market that are non-green, and so we've done our homework of transforming our framework in sustainable framework, so we can now capture, so we can support social development projects. And here I am one of the persons that represent, I mean, we have here people who represent institutions that have done that. They have already gone to the market to issue bonds with social environmental counterparts. So I would like you to explain a little bit more on how was the experience of the companies in this sense, how investors saw these emissions, and what's the award that was given. So if you could please share. Well, last year we made the decision of really making issuing of a bond. We thought it was a good moment in which we had a history to tell. So now telling a little bit of the backstage, one amazing thing was to find out the metrics that we wanted to link to this issuing. And honestly, it wasn't an easy job, because even though we knew the kind of investors, for us it was very important that the metrics that would be linked, the goals that were linked, were material. And when we talk about material, we're talking about that in which we can have an action and change the route. And we went through a lot of metrics. We thought about making an issuing connected to an environmental goal, but because of materiality, we took a step back. Even though we took a step back in this metric, we implemented internally because we thought it was important. but we were the first exchange in the world to make an issuing of sustainability-linked bond, and the first Brazilian company to do an issuing only linked to the metrics that are related with SF factors, which are the social factors. And we have two goals that talk with one another. The first one was to reach in 2026 35% of women in leadership. Today we have 29.4%. It seems easy, but it's not. We need to consider the growth of the company, the turnover, the promotion, and the development. The company today has about 35% of women, but in some part or at some level, we have a reduction of the percentage of women in the leadership. So this goal helps us to have a public commitment, which is the development of women for leadership. In fact, women, when they work in companies, they increase the potential of the GDP of a country, in addition to bringing a perspective of one of the most stakeholders in the society to the company. And the second goal was the creation of an index of inclusion and diversity. And what is that? It's an index that is going to measure the performance of the companies in diversity and inclusion in all of its arenas. Gender, people with physical disability, or black people in the company. And the idea is that in these we become champions in diversity and inclusion, and we need to deliver that until 2024. These goals, they talk with one another, because I want to demand that the companies that have policies of diversity, but I also need to show that as B3 that I do the same. There is a penalty if we do not fulfill any one of the goals. So, for example, if you don't fulfill one, you need to pay a higher fee, and we were able to have a subscription to capture $500 million. We got 700, and we did it very well. So 476. That was great. That is worth a lot. So it's very good for us to do these metrics. This is good for investors. This is good for companies. This is good for the company. And it shows for us as B3 great pride to be the first company to do an SLB. So this was very important, very significant, and also be the first Brazilian company to do only linked to the S goal. Shows that we are in the right path. Susanna is a champion because she's very much used to issue SLB, but this is the first one to us, was very significant. Oh, it's very nice to hear this story, which is a little bit different from ours. Susanna was the first company in the Americas to issue SLB, and it was an SLB that linked to our carbon goal. The story is a little bit different because Suzano, after merging with Fibra, we kind of redid, we listened to all of our stakeholders to define our matrix of materiality and define those themes in which our business could have a greater impact of positive transformation in society. So from that point on, we launched in 2020 a bunch of 15 goals. I know it's a lot of goals. And for these 15 goals to take place, we report over 450 indicators annually in our central of indicators. And now we're going to have a every 3-month report for the sake of transparency. They manage 9 of the ODS. And they are very material, not only for Suzano, but also for our stakeholders and the society as a whole. So out of the 15, I've chosen 4 to comment with you, and some of them are issues regarding emissions. So the first of them, the first issuing was related to the removal of 40 million tons of CO2. Today, Suzano is a negative carbon company, which means that they give a positive contribution for the climate. In other words, we remove more CO2 out of the atmosphere through our planting of native trees and eucalyptus for commercial use. We remove more CO2 than we emit, including scope 1, 2, and 3. The goal is to reduce even more the emissions and accelerate the capture so we can, until 2025, reach a liquid removal of 40 million tons, which is equivalent to the emissions of the city of São Paulo in 2 years. This was our goal for 2030, but in the COP26, as we wanted to do our share in the summon to companies, we announced the anticipation to 2025. Another goal that is very relevant for us is the goal of diversity and inclusion, of having 30% of women in the leadership of the company until 2025. This goal was also based on an emission of SLD. We also have other goals that we created on SLPs that are on the management of water resources. So we have residue, water, but we have other 3 goals that I would like to talk to you that have to do with this induction agenda. One of them has to do with biodiversity. So we have a huge territory extension within this territory extension, which is almost 2 million hectares all over Brazil. And we have, in the last 20 years, doing the monitoring in the registry of all the diversity present. And we have committed ourselves to, until 2030, connect 500 hectares of priority area for conservation out of our actions of areas. So the business model of Suzano Forest Fashion is on mosaic plantation. So we plant areas of eucalyptus, intercalating these areas with native forests so that the fauna and the flora can circulate and faster. We want to do the same model in areas that do not belong to Suzano. So we have selected 500,000 hectares of fragmented areas for conservation, bioma of the Amazon, Cerrado, or savanna, and this is a goal that is absolutely, it's a goal that we're going to need a lot of collaboration of the medium and small farmers so we can promote this connection. Another goal that is very important to us is the goal of bioproduct. In other words, the offer of products to the market that can replace products that today come from the fossil fossil matrix. So until 2030, we want to offer 10,000 tons of products that can replace, for example, disposable materials that come from plastic and other derivatives of oil, for instance. I believe that this is the way that we work, the induction of our partners, and we open up for collaboration of other companies. We call other stakeholders of the society to work with us on issues that are in fact important for our market, but that also can have a great collaboration to the society. Wow, very interesting. And now just to add to what you have said in terms of the bank, we're talking about companies, and in complement to that, the bank has been working with the diversification of its financial product. So today, we are building options for our clients. So the first experience that we had was in Renova Bid, which is an experience that carbon credit is already happening in the country in an initiative of regulation with the federal government, the Ministry of Mining and Energy, the participation of B3. And so we couple that in the sense of having a double advantage to a producer of biofuel, for instance. In addition to increasing their efficacy in terms of energy, they will receive a C-bill where they're going to do a trade with the fuel company that has to do their offset. We link those indicators to the moment that the C-bill emission, which is the concretization of the energy efficacy, BNDES in its finance will give a discount to the producer of biofuel. So we support these investments that will mean energy efficacy and efficiency, and by having this concretization of this efficiency, they receive that financial benefits from the bank. And so we align the interests and we foster the good production. What I'm closing here by saying is that I'm running a risk as a creditor because I am inducing to a good behavior. And so, as we go through this first experience, in less than a year, we've already financed more than 800 million projects. We've renovated our project with more than R$1 million, and we've launched a credit SG, which is the same theme, giving discount to companies that are committed in the same logic that was brought up by our colleague in social environmental practices that are differentiated. So, as the BNDES, we seek to be the partners of the private sector in this journey that at the end of the day will generate resilience to the business and will ensure that there is sustainability of the productive activities in the country. Our talk here is very short. We have some more minutes, and I would just like to go to my final remarks and also make a summary of what we said in the beginning. I believe that very important for the investors is that they demand from companies transparency in the publication of their data. The more the investors do, the better it is. This is one of the great vectors of induction to investment, and the companies that talk about and demonstrate this, that this work is paid. It's paid by the company, it's paid financially, and it generates a lot of pride to the workers, and is the right thing to do. So, most important of all, it's an intelligent and correct answer to all of the stakeholders. And it's a matter of starting. Suzano today is a great example. And if you want to know more how to start, just talk to us. And I am sure that we're going to have great conversations. Nice. And we talked a lot about resilience. And now talking about the global model and Brazilian model, we know that it is impossible to be a resilient business because we are not operating in a resilient environment. But let me talk a little bit about another thing that we have, which is to remove 200,000 people out of the poverty line in all of the territories where we go with a multidimensional strand, knowing that poverty in Brazil is a mechanism. So I think it's important that to have this holistic vision of all the stakeholders, this openness for collaboration, and I'm also at your full disposal in case you want to talk a little bit about how to start this conversation and how to establish commitments, clear commitments that are measurable, and follow that with total transparency and dialogue. Thank you. Just to make clear, of all of our experience geared towards the SG, we have funds, we have internal and external demands for good investments. So to bring this issue of sustainability to within the purpose of the companies and exercise that, certainly the companies will have access to cheaper funds, and they will also have access to more talents, because everybody wants to work with companies that respect the environment and are concerned about the diversity, etc. The clients, especially the younger ones, they want that, so you're going to access markets more easily. And you're also going to take over the regions because the regulatory issue is very much accelerated, whether it's state or private regulation that is moving fast as well, right, Anna? So undoubtedly, you're going to explore a market that is a lot more attractive. And if you are an entrepreneur, you can accelerate in this journey. So I would like to thank my partners here on the stage and everybody else for being willing to be here with us. And we are at your full disposal in case you need to talk to us. Thank you very much. We want to thank all of the participants of this theme dialogue, and we invite everybody now to check out the panel 3 that will talk about energy to grow, amplification, and sustainability for the development of the country. Coming up next.
As inscrições para a 6ª edição do Corporate Venture em Brasil estão abertas. Participe do maior evento de Corporate Venture da América Latina, que em 2022 volta a ser presencial. Entre no ambiente de Venture Capital e Inovação do Brasil e aprenda mais sobre a inovação aberta e os investimentos de grandes corporações brasileiras e internacionais. Neste ano, a programação promoverá melhores práticas de CVC, relacionamento com empreendedores, VCs e estruturação de veículos de investimentos. Além disso, o conteúdo inclui cases de grandes corporações, dados e tendências globais de Corporate Venture. Tudo isso com a presença de corporates internacionais e muito mais. Não perca a 6ª edição do Corporate Venture em Brasil. Faça a sua inscrição e junte-se a nós.